Hi! Today's video lesson over IXL is going to be adding and subtracting integers. Here are some first basic concepts we have to know. First question is, what is an integer? An integer is a whole number and its opposite. So for example, 3, the opposite of 3 is negative 3. The opposite of 4 is negative 4. The opposite of a million is a negative million. To solve integers, we have to understand absolute value. Absolute value is simply the absolute value of a number is simply its distance from 0. Again, its distance from 0. So the absolute value of 3 would be 3 because it's 3 units away from 0. The absolute value of negative 3 would be positive 3 because its distance from 0 is 3. Let's look at some examples. So let's look at a negative 25. The absolute value of a negative 25 would be positive 25. Because if you were to get on a number line and you would count how far a negative 25 is from 0, it's 25 units. The absolute value of a positive 25 is also 25 because it is 25 units away from 0. The absolute value of a negative 100 is positive 100. Again, its units away from 0 is 100. And finally, the absolute value of positive 100 is positive 100 because again it's 100 units away from 0. So let's look at some example problems for MyExcel, and then we'll see what rules we'll have to do to solve these problems with integers. Our first sample problem is a negative 2 minus 1. So we are subtracting integers. So our rules for subtracting integers, we first must follow constant change, which is CCC. I'll refer to CCC throughout the video now. Now, after we do our CCC, we determine if the signs of both integers are the same or if they are different. If they are the same, we have a set of rules. If they are different, we have also a set of rules. And I will go over those rules as we encounter those examples. So here's our example from MyExcel. Now, from MyExcel, the first thing it said we needed to do, from our notes, first thing it said we need to do whenever we subtract integers, so we have negative 2 minus 1, we must perform constant change. So I'm going to grab my little marker tool, I'm going to go constant change, and I highly recommend you do this on all your problems. So now, the first C means constant, that means it stays the same. So the negative 2 is going to stay a negative 2. Now, this minus sign, we're going to change it. It's going to become positive. And this positive 1, we're going to change it. It's going to become minus 1. So now I have a negative 2 plus a negative 1. Now we have to solve for our answer, which we have some rules for this, and we'll jump to this because this is, if we looked at step 2 of our rules, this is adding integers when both the signs are the same. Rules for adding integers when the signs are the same. Step 1, add the absolute values of the numbers. Step 2, the sign of the numbers is always the sign of the answer. It's pretty much like straight addition with positive numbers. So now we got to go over our steps. I've got to take the absolute value of both numbers. And remember, absolute value is simply distance from 0. So the absolute value of negative 2 is a positive 2. The absolute value of a negative 1 is a positive 1. So now I'm just simply left with 2 plus 1, which is 3. But if I put that in my answer in IXL, I will get this incorrect. What I need to do is to make this a negative 3 because both of these numbers are negative, so therefore that's why it's negative. And if you could just see, all I would have to go is negative 2 plus negative 1 is negative 3. And so that is the steps for finding your answer. We'll look at several more examples to help us out as we go. So our next IXL example is a negative 4 plus negative 5. Now, we're not subtracting integers, so all we're doing is we're adding integers. So let's go back, let's review our rules. Our rules for adding integers when the signs are the same. Add the absolute values of the numbers. The sign of the numbers is the sign of the answer. So we have a negative 4 plus negative 5. So again, we start off. We take the absolute value of both numbers. Remember, absolute value is distance from 0. So absolute value of negative 4 is positive 4. The absolute value of negative 5 is positive 5. So 4 plus 5 is simply 9. Now I can't circle 9 as my answer. That would be incorrect. Both of these are negative, so therefore my answer has to be negative. So my answer is negative 5. Excuse me, not negative 5, negative 9. Alright, my next example here, I have a negative 4 plus 1. Now, the signs are different. Because we have a negative 4 and a positive 1. We're not subtracting. We don't need a constant change. So let's jump to the rules for this. We have not had an example like this one yet. Alright, so rules for adding integers with different signs. Step 1, find the absolute value of both numbers. Step 2, subtract the absolute values. Step 3, the sign of the answer is the sign of the larger number. So, our example is a -4 plus 1. Now remember, step 1 is to find the absolute value of both numbers. So again, I draw the bars to represent our absolute value. Absolute value is distance from 0. So the absolute value of -4 is a positive 4. The absolute value of 1 is 1. So now I subtract those absolute values. That is step 2. So step 1 is find absolute values. Step 2 is subtract absolute values, so I get 3. Now I have to take a look at the absolute values and see which one's larger. Well, 4 is larger than 1. So my sign on 4 is a negative. So therefore my answer is -3. Alright, our next example is 2 minus -5. We are subtracting integers, so let's review our rules for subtracting integers. Rules for subtracting integers. Step 1, CCC, constant change. Step 2, determine if the signs are the same or different. Step 3 is going to be follow the rules for same signs or different signs adding of integers. Alright, so we have 2 minus -5. So step 1 of our rules say to perform constant change. So since our 2 is the constant, it just stays 2. Our negative sign is going to switch. It's going to become positive. And our negative sign is going to change. It's going to go from a -5 to a positive 5. Now, we have a simple 2 plus 5. Please don't complicate the simple here. Just add 2 plus 5 and get an answer of 7. Alright, our next example is a -3 minus 6. We are subtracting integers. Let's go back and let's look at our rules for subtracting integers. Rules for subtracting integers. Step 1, CCC, constant change. Step 2, determine if the signs are different or the same. Step 3, follow the rules for same signs or different signs depending on your situation. Alright, in our situation we have a -3 minus 6. So, step 1, constant change. So -3, my minus sign becomes a plus, and my positive 6 becomes -6. Now, I have addition of integers where both of the signs are the same. Both of the signs are the same. So let's review the rules. The rules for adding integers when signs are the same. Step 1, add the absolute values of the numbers. Step 2, the sign of the numbers is always the sign on the answer. Step 1, find the absolute value of both numbers. Absolute value of -3 is positive 3. Absolute value of -6 is positive 6. So I have 3 plus 6, which is 9. Now we take a look. Both numbers are negative, so therefore my answer has to be negative. Alright, our final example on adding and subtracting integers. I have a -9 minus a -38. So in this example, we are subtracting integers. Rules for subtracting integers. Step 1, CCC, constant change. Step 2, determine if the signs are different or the same. Once you've determined the signage, then you go to step 3, where you either follow the rules for same signs or different signs. As you can see, we're subtracting our integer here, so we have to perform our operation constant change, CCC. So that means our -9 just stays the same. Now this minus sign right here, since we're going to change it, becomes positive. This -38, we're going to change it, so it's also going to become positive. So we have a -9 plus a positive 38. Just by reading it out loud, I know that my signs are different. So let's take a look at what we should do when our signs are different. Rules for adding integers with different signs. Step 1, find the absolute value of both numbers. Step 2, subtract the absolute values. Step 3, the sign of the answer is the sign of the larger number. So we have a -9 plus positive 38. We read our rules. What it says is to find the absolute value of both numbers. So remember, absolute value is distance from 0. The absolute value of a 38 is a positive 38. Now the absolute value of a negative 9, its distance from 0, is positive 9. So what I'm left with is 38 minus 9, because step 2 says to subtract those absolute values. So I go ahead and I do my subtraction. I go 38 minus 9, which is going to give me 29. Now, I have to determine the sign of my answer. Is it going to be a positive 29 or negative 29? So I take a look here. 38 is larger than 9. The sign on 38 is positive, so therefore it's going to be a positive 29 for my answer. So let's jump over to our IXL. Let's put in our positive 29 for our answer. Let's submit and finish. And we got it correct. We got our SMART goal of 82, which makes us happy. And so thank you again for viewing this little video lesson on adding and subtracting integers. If you still have questions or concerns, please see me tomorrow at school or email me. Thank you. Have a great day.